To ScriptCamp's Christmas Pitch Fest. This is going to be about a 2-hour event. So hopefully we have come with our script ideas ready. It can be something that you've already written and that you're trying to get better at just communicating the basics of that idea. Or maybe this is something that you're planning to write and you want to sort of feel out how good of an idea is this, or which ways can I improve this, or how can I kind of find the problems in this. A lot of the time with this sort of pitching kind of class, it starts out, or we try to explain it in terms of this is how you communicate a movie idea, but it turns into sometimes more of a story diagnosis where we start to realize maybe the problem isn't with the pitch. Sometimes the problem is with the story itself. So we can maybe start to see a few of those issues become apparent here. And you can just get basically feedback on, you can get feedback on a movie idea, whatever stage that you have it at. We understand it doesn't have to be, not everything's going to be totally perfect or super well rehearsed or anything like that. The purpose of the class is to learn and to get better and to kind of get used to this idea of you're on stage, you're on, when you're pitching, you're going to be in front of rooms full of strangers sometimes, and getting over these sort of like public speaking anxiety issues that a lot of writers have is really essential, as well as just how do you condense a film narrative into a very short amount of time, 2 to 3 minutes, which is what we're going to put on the clock. And how do you essentially excise everything that's not important? Because so much of pitching is really just sticking to the important parts and not trying to overload the listener with too many details, or too much world building, too much of the setting, or too much of anything irrelevant. You kind of have to cut right to the greatest hits, the most important stuff, and don't overburden us with too many character names or factions or fictional countries we have to know about or anything like this. Okay, so let's take a look here. So before we get started, our purpose today is to have fun, to help you refine your idea, to practice and improve your pitching technique, and you know what, just to spread the Christmas spirit. But be prepared to hear that movie idea doesn't work super well at the moment, even if it's something you've written before, and maybe the problem is that you just didn't quite communicate it right. That could be the problem, or it might be I might start identifying what I see or what I perceive as issues in the narrative itself. Just be ready to hear these things. Like, no matter what, you should always kind of be practicing the skill of receiving feedback. And especially if you want to work in TV, which is so intensely collaborative every day, you're in a room full of people that you need to pitch ideas to and pitch stories to, and you have to be ready to hear some of them shot down or some of them, dismissed very quickly, especially when you're just starting out on a show. So you need to kind of already be building the skill of receiving feedback and hearing what the issues are in your idea. Not if something's absolutely perfect, there's no need to pitch it in a class or a workshop. So you should come with ideas that maybe have a room for improvement, or you feel have room for improvement, and get used to just modifying and changing these based on the feedback that you get. It's not me saying you have to go and change the script in these ways. This is just notes and reactions that I have just upon first hearing it. And we ultimately won't, I'm not going to read the full project, so ultimately I can't really say if the issues are with your presentation or with the idea itself. So just take this for what it's worth. Everyone's notes. No one's notes are an end-all, be-all prescription on what to do to fix this or make it better. We're just doing our best in the time that we have to, process what we hear and to respond in the most helpful way possible. Okay, so we're looking for, and generally we can say we, meaning the industry, is looking for clear, original, and high-concept pitches that bloom in the mind to suggest a compelling movie. And in this one, we're looking at a holiday theme. So we have a special category just if you have a holiday-themed movie pitch. It can be Christmas. It can be any really sort of like end-of-year sort of celebratory holiday that you want. If you have some great idea for like an Easter movie or something, we could possibly count that. But in any case, we're mostly focusing these on the, like the Hanukkahs, the Christmases, the Kwanzas, things like that. So we are looking for title and genre, first of all. So that should just be, I would recommend having, if you're planning on pitching today, on your personal document that you have in front of you, you should type out the logline and be ready to have that ready to share with us if you haven't already. And the title and genre go on top of that too. So the logline is going to be that one-sentence expression of what the movie's about. See if you can condense it down to just one sentence. It's usually going to take the form of, it's going to be like, when inciting incident, an adjective protagonist must conflict or else stakes, is kind of like the formula that we use for loglines a lot of the time. If it's not exactly like that, that's okay. Just try to write in as concise and efficient of a sentence as possible, just that really brief summary of what your movie idea is. Focus on a main character. Make sure we are following a character's journey and it feels like this is a person's story. You're going to, so you'll post the title, genre, and logline. I'll call on one of them, then I'll be like, go ahead and read this out for us, and you'll read it out. And after that, just wait for some clarifying questions just based on the logline alone. So I might have none, but it might, off the bat, I might not understand something in the logline, so just wait for that first kind of feedback. And then I will, when you're ready, I will say go ahead with the pitch, which it says 1 to 2 minutes there, but I was really planning on 2 to 3 minutes. So I'm not going to cut you off at 2 minutes or anything. At 3 minutes, I'll wave and post a clock emoji in the chat, just so you know, start wrapping it up. And I will have to hard cut you off at 4 minutes. So you really got to get right to the point with these things. So you're essentially taking us through the setup up to about the midpoint, then suggesting the trajectory of the rest of the narrative. You don't have to go through every single beat and take us all the way to the ending. You can if you have a great ending and you kind of know exactly how to get there and you're within your time. So if it doesn't take you far over your time, then you're fine to go all the way through to the end if you want. But think of this as like a verbal trailer almost. So you're explaining why this specific journey will be fun and interesting, and the sort of like the types of conflicts we'll be seeing, and you'll be highlighting in terms of number of characters, like focus on your main character, your villain, and maybe a central relationship are probably going to be the only characters we need to know or even name. You don't have to give us any character names at all. If it's helpful for the presentation of the story to have some names, then sometimes you want to give us the name of the main character, the central relationship, or that villain. And central relationship here could be love interest, could be best friend, could be a mentor or parent figure, something like that. It's just like you want to not overload us with too many characters that we have to keep track of. Try to focus on even if there's a lot going on in the movie, try to focus on the journey of your main character, and you're just suggesting everything else. And anything that is so important that it can't be removed. You're just focusing on everything that's so important that there's no way that the story would make sense if you took it out. And then at the end of you explaining the pitch part, then we'll have questions, discussion, and feedback from both me and from the rest of the room. If anybody else would like to just leave some text comments for you, you can weigh in with your own questions and responses to the pitches that you're hearing. Okay, so what is ScriptCamp? We're a screenwriting community that's focused on bringing free and low-cost classes to help you learn screenwriting here. So going from idea to first draft to finished script, that's what we do in ScriptCamp. We're part of SkillCamp, which is a larger company that features many servers, all of which bring free and low-cost classes that help you master your life goals. We have lots of free classes, events, and workshops both on ScriptCamp and our other servers. Some classes just for supporting members, such as the Boot Camp programs, Writer's Lab, and the Advanced Labs. Here's a bit about me. I've been a pro screenwriter since 2017 when I got signed for the first time after placing on the top 10 of the Launchpad contest. Since then, have written for Creepshow on the Shudder Network, and have a thriller script set up in a major production company in town. I teach the boot camps and weekly Writer's Lab. And in SkillCamp, we have many other servers that you can take other classes there too. If you get membership to ScriptCamp, that's everything. So you don't have to get separate memberships for these different servers. We have Film Camp for filmmaking, Creator Camp for home studio. We have Toon Camp for animation, where we have weekly classes in animation. We have Word Camp, which is novel writing and prose, and we are just now wrapping up our first ever novel boot camp, 12 weeks to write your very first novel, or to write it, maybe not your first, but to write a novel from beginning to end. We have Design Camp, looking at graphic design, and we're getting going with Lingo Camp. We haven't had any classes on it yet, but that's going to be for learning languages. We're going to be getting that one going in the new year. Code Camp, too. Code Camp classes in programming start in January. So new classes coming soon. Some are going to be free and public, and some are just going to be for supporting members, but definitely come by these servers and say hi. You can donate. You can become a supporting member and get access to all our boot camps and labs from $29 a month with a yearly discount. That's 40% that you save by buying yearly. And you can volunteer. If you know a skill or language you'd like to teach, you can let me or Nacho know. Nacho is our co-founder. You can message either of us on Discord or send an email to Conor@scriptcamp.net if you want to volunteer to teach something. And you can tell your friends. You can refer somebody, and you will both get a free month of unlimited membership plus a free month of Arc Studio Pro. So here's what's coming up. We have a few more of these promotional classes coming up this month, so these are just one-off free and public events. We have this Pitch Fest today, where you're going to pitch these movie ideas and win prizes. We have How to Sell Your Movie Idea on the 28th, which is again going to be focusing on communicating. It isn't really looking at the financial aspect of selling. We mean selling in terms of how do you sell someone on a movie idea, I guess is a clearer way to put that. So again, focusing on concise communication of cinematic stories. We'll have a TV writing class on the 30th at 6 o'clock. And that is going to be potentially with a guest as well. That has not been announced yet. But protagonist for your story on Friday, January 6th at 11 a.m. Then later that day, we have week 2 of our TV boot camp. So boot camps resume in the new year. TV starts up on the 6th at 6 p.m. And then brand new feature boot camp starts out January 8th at 11 a.m. And that will be running Sundays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. From January to February. After each of the boot camps, we tend to switch the slots around. So TV will move to Sunday, and feature will move to Friday. Okay, let me just take questions on any of the stuff that I've brought up so far before I go into some tips on pitching and things you should know, and I will do an example pitch for you guys. Any questions on anything I've asked about or anything we've brought up so far? And you can either use the chats, or you can unmute and speak. Here's a question in the chat from Too Lazy. So the pitches should be around 3 minutes at most. Yes, that's right. So between 2 and 3 minutes is fine. If you finish before that, then that's okay, if you really stick the landing. But you'll have up to 3 minutes, and then I'll waive for time. Any other questions? Okay, let's go into some tips, and then I'll do a sample pitch for you guys. So, a couple tips. The goal here is to catch and hold the listener's attention. So your story should really blossom from the most fundamental expressions, then to the more granular details from there. So think of this as this big box, and within this huge box, there are smaller and smaller boxes that represent less complicated versions of the story. It's like we can explain the same story in very different terms using like tons of explanation and tons of exposition, or we can tell a very simple version of it kind of centering on the protagonist. So instead of diving right in and trying to look at the story as a whole and trying to explain every aspect of the backstory and the world that it takes place in, we really just need to start with a pitch with the very simplest version. So it's helpful if you lead with comps, and comps stands for comparables. These would be two movies that are going to be similar to your movie in tone and subject matter. You might look at it as like the world of the first thing with the tone or subject matter, or the approach or style of the second thing. So if we say, it's going to be like Mean Girls meets Friday the 13th, then we're like, okay, then it's going to be in a high school setting with teenage character. Well, that just sounds like Scream is what I'm pitching now, right? But you get the idea, right? Like we take the world of the first thing, and you might imagine the style or approach or genre of the second thing. You can totally do it that way. There's not an exact science to that, but don't pick more than two comps. If you pick more than two, it just starts sounding like a bunch of confusing nonsense. And in terms of what comps should you choose, at least one of your comps should be of the medium that you are writing in. So if this is a TV, and you can pitch a TV pilot if you really want to. I'm mostly looking for feature pitches today, but if all you have is a feature or is a pilot pitch prepared, then that's okay. But in any case, if you are pitching a feature, at least one of your comps should be a feature. If you're pitching TV, at least one of your comps should be a TV show. Okay, Jason says she's not here to pitch it, but Monica came up with something yesterday that you thought was too good not to share in the forum. Yeah, feel free to share it just in the chat if you want to. Let me hit a couple other of the essential pitching tips. One, make sure that the story's walls are pretty clearly laid out. So in terms of the time frame, the boundaries, or the ticking clock, it's pretty essential just to understand, like, how is the story moving forward with a sense of urgency and inevitability and momentum to it. You don't want to include too much background or context that isn't absolutely essential. Like, I thought of this while I was camping in Alabama, or I thought of this in this time or that time, or I thought of this because blah, blah, blah. Unless it's something really quick and you're just like, I'm a structural engineer, so this is a movie about structural engineers in space, or something like that. If you have some kind of really relevant background that you just want to mention quickly, that's okay. But don't go on and on about it. Generally, that's a nice tip for all of pitching. Just don't go on and on. Don't use character names unless it's based on a real person or public domain character. Or I'm going to revise that and amend that. We're hearing some sound from somebody's mic here. Are you guys all keeping your mics muted? Oh, we're hearing some sounds from North Paladin. I'm just going to have to mute that mic there. So if you click the small gray microphone icon in the bottom left corner of your Discord screen, that's how you can mute or unmute yourself. And if the microphone is red, that means we've had to put it on there for some reason. Okay, where was I with this one? So, oh yeah, so in terms of character names, you can give us like 1 to 2 character names if you're going to, or like I would say maybe 3 at the absolute most, but just remember your audience is probably not going to remember these things. So it's best if you just explain things in terms of, you know, and then the kid does this, and the guy does this, and his love interest does this, and you sort of explain them in those terms rather than relying on the audience remembering each character's actual name. Okay, focus on the main character. Well, I mentioned the only characters we're probably going to focus on being perhaps antagonist and central relationship and main character. You want to ask yourself why this specific hero, and it should be pretty clear why we're watching this person go on this journey. It shouldn't just be like a guy goes on this journey for the most part. It should be a guy with some particular unique challenge as it pertains to this obstacle, or a guy that has a unique tactic in approaching this challenge, or a guy that has a lot of room to grow. It's not just, you know, think of Ebenezer Scrooge, right? It's not just a guy gets visited by 3 ghosts. It's the most miserable, selfish guy ever who hates Christmas. And as he's visited, that's why he's visited. That's why it's him. It's not just anyone could fit into the Scrooge story. It wouldn't make sense for just anyone to get visited by these guys that make you re-examine your entire life and worldview. So make it clear why it's this person, and we shouldn't just, at the end of it, we shouldn't be left thinking, oh, that could have been anyone in that role as that protagonist, because then it's just not going to really feel as resonant for the most part. Think of this, for instance. You want to imply an internal journey that will intertwine with that external one. So Scrooge is the most bitter, old, selfish guy ever, so we understand, okay, this is going to be the journey of him becoming a better person and seeing the error of his old ways. If your pitch is something like a purge-type society where every day at midnight, a random citizen is chosen to be publicly hunted down for a bounty, a guy becomes the target and has to escape. Okay, that's a clear hook for the story, but it's not really a complete pitch. That's just like a fragment of a pitch because we don't know why this guy, what's his journey. So we really want to look at this question of what's the character's journey, and that's what we mean when we ask, like, whose story is this? We're asking you to clarify that character's journey and how they change and how they grow over the course of the story. Motivation and urgency should make it really clear that your character has to act and why, and their conflict should come with the highest possible stakes and consequences for your genre for the most part. It shouldn't really feel like an episodic episode, or like an episodic story of which it's just one of many in a season, and it shouldn't feel overly internal or like it's just about people sitting around and thinking about stuff, or people just talking and discussing stuff. The word discussing is usually a red flag that something is that conflict and drama is not high enough in your story. I know there's exceptions to that now and again, but just think, like, if we're saying, and then they go there and talk, and then they go there and talk, it just doesn't really sound like you're framing it properly. It's not that movies about people talking can't be dramatic, and in fact they should be very dramatic, should be, or very funny or very interesting. And if it's just sounding like you're giving us a series of situations where the characters are just, then they talk there and discuss this, then they discuss that, it's not really going to feel like a movie. It will feel more like a class or a lecture or something like that. Common problems. Let me pause for questions so far, because this has been a lot of tips thrown pretty quickly at you. So, any questions just based on what I've brought up so far in terms of pitching and communicating story ideas? Alright, if there's no questions, it looks like someone's typing, but as soon as they enter their question in the chat, I'll be able to read that one. Let me go on to a couple common problems, and then I think we will go into prizes, then I'll do a sample pitch for you. I think I'm going to pitch a movie that I have seen before rather than one that I'm thinking of. Here's the question from Too Lazy. How much of the plot should we describe? Can we be brief and do a basic logline pitch, or something that goes over the plot more detailed? Yeah, so you start with the logline, and then you will take questions just based on the logline alone before we move into the pitch section, so you're kind of doing both. And once we move into the story, then you're basically taking us up to the midpoint, and then you're saying, and then the heroes need to do this in order to achieve their goal. and then we're kind of like imagining the latter half of the movie more or less. You can take us through as much of it as you want, but that's usually how these things go. And you can take us, like I mentioned before, you can go all the way through to the end if it's within your time and you feel like it's just a natural extension of the story you've been telling. You don't have to go all the way through to the end, but you want to just imply the rest of the movie. So be as detailed as you need to do that, essentially. So take us around to the midpoint and then say, and then they have to do this. And that's kind of how these things generally go. I'll do a sample in just a minute so you'll be able to see. Thanks for the questions, Too Lazy. Any other questions? I'll read this one because Jason posted it. I don't think Jason's actually pitching this. Are you? Or I could just read the logline out if you just don't want to do the whole thing right now. One for each night. It's a horror comedy. I think I see where this is going. 7 and 8 crazy nights. Maybe call it 7 crazy nights. After her brother's murder...
Well, it has to be 8.
It does have to be 8. I get it, but I see what you mean. Okay. So after her brother's murder, a lapsed rabbinical student is forced to face faith and family in order to solve the crime. Says the Gematria killer, I'm not sure what that means. 8 nights of Hanukkah, 8 sacrifices to be made, so one Messiah may come. Okay, this isn't quite a movie pitch, but it's a funny idea. I mean, I'm in for this. Someone murdering people on every day of Hanukkah. Okay. I'm not sure why a student would have to solve a crime, and I have questions like that about it, but I like the basics of it. It's an interesting little world. I don't think there's been a movie like that yet.
The idea is that there really haven't been Hanukkah-themed horror films. There's there's plenty of Christmas-themed ones, but I can't think of a single Hanukkah-themed one. So it was like, well, let's make up a silly Hanukkah-themed one. So that's all it was.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Someone should definitely do a Hanukkah-themed horror movie. I'm kind of surprised no one has ever. Or maybe there is one that I just haven't heard of. Go ahead.
Just for your own knowledge, Gematria is like the Jewish version of numerology. It's like when Madonna was super into the Kabbalah, that's what she was into. She was into like the numerology portion of Jewish, so it's the idea of Judaism. So it'd be like a Jewish fundamentalist killer, basically.
Maybe murdering people for not being devout enough or something like that, perhaps?
No, it would be likely due to like how the numerology points to specific people and they're targeted because the numbers show up in the right way in their lives or something like that.
Oh, like prophecy. They're like prophesized victims.
Yeah.
I see.
Like the number 23 might be another comp.
Mm-hmm. Or,
so...
Go ahead.
No, that's it.
Okay. Yeah, this is funny. It's not very fleshed out, obviously, because it's just kind of a bare bones idea right now. Like, why would a student have to solve this crime? I think you're sort of saying it's like an amateur investigation, but then it's like, why don't you, most people would just let the cops handle something like that? You don't have to answer these questions.
I think
it's okay. But if you have answers, go ahead. Sure.
I think the idea was that like this is like a cop who was a rabbinical student at one point.
Oh. Okay, then yeah, you'd have to describe them as a cop in the description. I get what you mean,
yeah.
but if we just you have so few words to use that if you describe somebody in one way, then we form a kind of mental picture of them. That's difficult to then imagine. Oh, but also they're a cop after that, So I think that would have to be pretty clear. You might want to say like a cop having a crisis of faith or something like that might just be a clearer way to present that. But
a one-time rabbinical student, now cop, or something like that.
Sure, or you could just say a Jewish cop. I mean, I think we mostly kind of get the same idea.
Gotcha.
Unless there's something specific that you're trying to highlight there, like an ex-Jewish cop or a really devout Jewish cop or something like that.
Gematria is like kind of niche that even a lot of Jewish people don't really look into. It's like a very, it's just like very fundamentalist, ultra-conservative. It's almost like Jewish mysticism, so it's not really Judaism.
I see. Okay.
But anyway,
good to know. But it might be a little bit. Yeah, it might be a little bit beyond the scope of the pitch to get too into. But yeah, I know it's not exactly your pitch. Anyway, cool idea. You guys should. Yeah, you two should work on that more. I think that's a great idea. Taylor has the question. Based on the gematria discussion, what's your suggestion for explaining complex concepts like that in a pitch? Don't frame them as complex, or explain them in the simplest way possible, really. I mean, the way that Jason just explained, it's like astrology, or it's like, what is it, numerology, or whatever you described it as. So yeah, compare it to something that the audience would know. You don't want to spend your pitch time going way too into a concept. Thanks, Jason. Let's look at some problems, and then I will do prizes. Oh, we're hearing some sound here. I think someone's not muted. Let's check the list. Oh, Jason, I think your mic's still open, if you wouldn't mind muting. Thank you. Okay. So, common problems. An idea for an idea. So if your idea is limited to something like, it's going to be a war movie like Saving Private Ryan, but it's going to be set in Korea, then that's so vague it's not really ready to workshop, because that's just, there's no character, there's no hook, there's no journey. Sometimes you do, or sometimes it's only a hook. Like, if all you have is it's a one-take action movie, but set in Korea, then there's not enough. There's no character there. There's no clear obstacle there. There's no clear objective. There's no tangible goalpost. We're missing a lot of the things that we need for a pitch to work. Or on the other hand, if you, like, the opposite problem of only having a hook is having no hook at all, and the story just sounds completely down the middle and more like just a description of the genre, or like you picked some random script or book off a shelf and were just like some very standard entry in that genre. It's not that that's going to kill you, it just is going to leave us at the end like, okay, so what? Like, I'm not excited to see that, when the idea is that you're communicating the story well enough that somebody would, in theory, if they like the subject matter that you're talking about, they'd be interested in seeing the movie afterwards. So if it's just like when her family is murdered, a Brooklyn housewife has to hunt down the killers and get revenge. It's like, well, okay, but what's the actual hook there? What makes that different from every other movie like that? So, and then what syndrome? This is pretty common. So, clear hook but unclear journey. And we might be left with the question, what is the actual goalpost? So here's just an example I've used before. A depressed guy moves into a house with 7 demons, each representing one of the deadly sins, and they all try to help him get back on his feet. Like, pride helps him with his confidence, lust helps him with romance, etc. Okay, great. So it's like Casper meets Inside Out, but getting back on your feet is such an intangible objective that unless you really highlight what that means for your character, then it becomes difficult to understand that story or to, quote, see the movie. And when we say that, that's a really key term. When we say, I can see the movie, that means that you've given the reader or listener enough that they can picture it and that they can kind of imagine what the major set pieces of the movie would be and the major moments of it. Enough that it's a good sign. You want to hear, I can see the movie. If you hear, I can't quite see the movie, that just might mean that you haven't highlighted what your characters are actually doing enough. We have this and then what question where it's like, okay, we have the hook, but what are the characters actually doing for the most part? Are they just sitting around? I don't quite understand. So if you hear the question, if you hear the note, I can't see the movie, that's what that means. But just because you can see the movie doesn't mean it's always going to be super compelling and amazing. With this no clear hook problem, like sometimes if it just sounds like a really down the middle story, we might say, okay, I can see it, but do I want to see it? And that's ultimately what you want to do with the pitch. You want the reader to be able to see it and want to watch it, I guess is how we should say. You want to see it and you want to watch it. Execution dependent is another big thing here, where it's pretty much all there, and it sounds like it is a movie more or less, but it seems to rely on style or performances or cinematography or directing or other factors like the extremely poetic execution of your art house script or something like that, where your whole pitch is, well, it's a series of kaleidoscopic colors and images and snippets of life all over the world. Then we're like, okay, that sounds like an art project, but entirely execution dependent. And if there's something else that's just really difficult to communicate, or you're not communicating about your pitch, then it might come off as execution dependent. So the problem is we can't rely too much on the style of the movie. We can't just say, oh, it'll be really good though, or the action sequences will be really well choreographed, or the comedy will be really funny. It has to be clear through the machinery of the plot alone why it will be funny or what is funny about it in that case. All right. Any last questions before we go over prizes? Okay, let's look at prizes. We have honorable mention. We have 3 prizes that we're offering. Honorable mention gets a ScriptCamp coffee mug. These ceramic mugs are designed with a colorful rim, handle, and inside, so the mug is bound to spice up your holiday screenwriting session. Nice work, Nacho. You can tell he works in marketing.
You're You're blocking the beautiful image. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Look at that. Is that a cinnamon? Some cinnamon sticks over there to the left of it. And what is that? A pomegranate? I can't even tell. Prizes we have. Okay, best holiday themed pitch. This is its own prize. You will get this nice fleece hoodie made of ring-spun cotton and suede fleece polyester. This embroidered unisex hoodie is exceptionally soft and comfortable. Its front pouch pocket and what? And dropped shoulder. Oh, that's a. I messed up the copy because I didn't know what a dropped shoulder was. Its front pouch pocket and dropped shoulder give it a casual look. A screenwriter loungewear essential. Oh man, that just looks cozy, doesn't it? I don't have one of these yet, so somebody should tell me how they are. And then our best pitch prize, this is the top prize, 1 month of unlimited script camp, and a month of Arc Studio Pro, and Discord Nitro, and this nice script camp t-shirts. So note, in answer to the question in the chat, they do not have to be holiday themed, but since we have a category just for that, then so I hope some people have brought holiday themed pitches, I guess I will say. You get extra points, as Nacho says. Yes, thank you. Okay, so I think I should probably just do kind of like a quick sample for you guys, just so you get the sense of how much information to include and what to really focus on and what this looks like. And you'll see it goes by pretty quick. I'm going to pitch a movie I've seen. I was thinking of actually, you know what? Star Wars is pretty hard to pitch, actually, because when you take a pretty complex story, like Star Wars it doesn't feel complex watching it, but there's a lot going on. You know, it's like samurai meets World War II in space. There's a lot of backstory to the world and stuff, and we sort of ask the question, like, where do we come in with a pitch like that? And if I were to pitch Star Wars, I'd probably come in with Luke, and I'd be like, okay, so there's this this farmer that lives on this desert planet, right? Even though the actual movie begins with we're up in space in orbit over Tatooine, and we've got the Tantive 4, the blockade runner, being chased by the Star Destroyer, and we've got Princess Leia. We introduce the droids, but for the purposes of a pitch, you generally kind of need to orient us properly, and you can't take us through every single beat. So for that, I would probably start, and I'm not going to do Star Wars, but I would begin with Luke. There's this moisture farmer, isn't that what he is? Who lives on a desert planet with his adopted parents. And one day, droids crash into. So you see how we need to start on the main character for the most part, and center the storytelling around them, so it really feels like their story. If you spend 10 minutes telling me about R2-D2 and C-3PO at the beginning of the Star Wars pitch, we're going to lose track. We're going to think, okay, so those are the main characters then? And we're going to get kind of lost. So Star Wars is a notoriously kind of tricky thing to fully communicate and pitch. I think I better go with something sort of... let me go with How to Train Your Dragon, because I think that this came out in 2008 or 9, didn't it? And so I don't feel terrible about spoiling the entire plot. It's also pretty simple, and it's like it's just an easy story to communicate. It has a very clear kind of value shift for its main character as he goes, like a very, very clear journey, I guess I should say. And the internal and external journeys just interweave really well together. So I took a few notes for a few movies I might pitch. I was thinking of maybe doing Elf also. Elf is really good. I think I will do How to Train Your Dragon, though. I just took bullet point notes, so you don't have to write out an extensive document for this, especially if you know your story like the back of your hand, which you generally should, unless it's something brand new that you're just trying out. Then you should just really need bullet points, like 5 to 8 bullet points usually will take you through the ending of just a 2 to 3 minute pitch. Excuse me. Nacho says he thought Luke was a nerf herder. I don't think we ever clarify what a nerf herder even is in Star Wars. And I've played so many Star Wars video games. Are nerfs like a thing? Are they a creature? I can name like a lot of aliens from that world, but I don't know about nerfs. I kind of like that they never even explain what that is. Okay, so why don't I go into How to Train Your Dragon, and what should I put up in the background? Maybe I'll just leave this tips thing up so you can just read that back if you haven't gotten a chance to yet. And if you're watching on Discord, you may need to click on the video feed. If you click my name, which says the word live next to it, then you can bring up the video feed and watch along during the class. In this, I'm going to be bringing up the log lines and pasting them into a document to maybe mark them up a little bit and just have everyone able to look at them on the stream at the same time. Okay, I think I'm just gonna go into this. Somebody linked an article about a Nerf herd. It's like a yak. I kind of thought it'd be like a little monster, but it's like a big cow. Okay, good to know. I'm gonna keep an eye. I'll set a stopwatch for myself, I think, just to make sure I don't go over time. But I'm just gonna kind of keep it casual. I'm not gonna rush through it. I'm just going to try to explain the entire plot of How to Train Your Dragon in 2 to 3 minutes, and if I have enough time, I'll go all the way through to the ending. So I think I will probably be able to pull it in under 2, or around 2. Let's just see. Okay, so I'm going to start my clock, and then I'm just going to go right into it. And if you don't want to have spoilers for the 2009 animated movie How to Train Your Dragon, give me like 5 minutes and then come back, or deafen your headphones for like 5 minutes, then return. Let's just go into it. So, there's an island of Vikings that is at war with the dragons that populate it, which are always raiding and stealing their livestock, and the war's been going on as long as anyone can remember. Hiccup, our main character, is the runt of the tribe, more of an inventor, which doesn't really impress his stern father, who's the village chief. During a raid, by pure chance, Hiccup knocks a powerful and rare dragon out of the air, and he feels sorry for it, so sorry that he decides not to kill it, not to kind of pass the test of manhood, and instead to keep it secretly and nurse it back to health. So instead of killing it, he keeps it in a secluded area away from his tribe, and he decides to name it Toothless. So he keeps Toothless from the village, bonding with the dragon in private and learning how to fly on his back. And when the local tough girl, who he's got a huge crush on but has no chance with because he's the runt of the tribe, she discovers where he's keeping the dragon. He takes her on a ride on the dragon's back, which starts convincing her that humans and dragons can maybe get along. Together they discover that a huge evil dragon is actually responsible for the war. It's been using the smaller ones as its gatherers and servants and manipulating them into attacking and raiding the Viking villages. And when this giant dragon threatens his home village, Hiccup has to lead a team of the other kids, the aspiring dragon killers of his hometown, to become a sort of dragon riding squadron, which they need to work together to protect their families from this massive beast. I'm at 127. I'm going to go through to the end. So, Hiccup ends up defeating it, but he loses a leg in the fight, so he has to replace it with a mechanical one, which he invents himself, to lock into the pedal contraption that he made to control Toothless's prosthetic tail that he built for him. So, they're both now kind of missing pieces from themselves, but each one kind of provides what the other lacks. And in the wake of their victory, Hiccup's father, who's now completely impressed by his actions and finally accepts him as the man that he's grown into, he reinvents the society to live at peace with the dragons, helping each other rather than fighting. Dragons move into the village and coexist with the humans, and life is now awesome. Okay, that was 207. So that's about how much detail you want to include. We don't need to go into the full cast. I don't need to go into the subplots. And we're doing a lot of implication. We're like implying the internal journey. Well, in this one, I had enough time to actually go through to the ending and really, really clarify what that internal journey was. So nobody at this point should be left asking the question, whose story was that? How did that main character change? Right? We followed the runt, the smallest kid in the entire Viking tribe, who through his empathy and ingenuity, he makes friends with the dragons and becomes a man not through trial of combat, but through, compassion instead. So we see him grow up and sort of come of age and become a full-fledged Viking. That's the journey of the movie. So no one should be unclear as to whose story this is or how they have grown or changed. Does anyone have any questions just based on that pitch as to like what kind of stuff to include or how to deliver this? Too Lazy asks, do they have to be that lengthy? That was 2 minutes. That was like almost the minimum length. You're asking, can it be shorter? Like, can you do 1 minute? If you want to, if you feel that that's enough time to communicate like that character, that like whole arc of the character, that should really be the focus, is like, look at the character, look at how they're changing, look what they're going up against, and how are their actions affecting them in their sort of journey. If you feel you can do that in less than 2 minutes, then go for it. But ultimately, I might just sort of be like, I want to hear more. Like, can you expand a little bit on this? Yeah, up to you, is the answer to that question. If you feel confident you can deliver it shorter, go for it. Other questions? And feel free to unmute and ask your question over voice if you want, or you can type in the chat, and I will read them from there. I'm also going to bring up our Google Drive so I can paste these in and everyone can look at the log lines at the same time.
The whole, maybe this isn't much of a question, but more of a, how do you juggle all of this and be like, oh shoot, did I do a don't? Did I do a don't? Did I fuck up? Did I make it?
You just do your best. I mean, it's okay if you mess it up or don't do a great job. Just give yourself permission to screw it up and to learn. You have room to grow. If you haven't been pitching in Hollywood for years, then chances are you haven't done this very much. Unless you have, in which case that's great. But no, you have permission to not do a great job. This is for learning. It's a learning workshop. Any other questions? All right. Okay, if there's no more questions, then go ahead and you can post log lines in the chat now. And I will start calling people up. I'll give you guys a few minutes to paste these in. It's in all caps. It sounds like I'm yelling. Post them in chat. Smiley face. You can do emoticon.
I have a log line, but it's pretty short. These are this should be on the longer side.
No, that's okay. Just one sentence is all it needs to be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Make sure when you post in the chat, include the title and genre as well. Thank you, Taylor. I'm gonna start pasting this in. You guys should keep posting log lines. I'm just going to put them up. A thriller, okay. And you guys can, while we are going through these first few pitches, we have an hour and 15 minutes for the class, so you'll have time to add yours to the sort of queue, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. I'll wait until a few more get posted, maybe at least one more, and then I can call our first pitcher up. Thank you, Morgana. All right, and thank you to Lazy. I'll put that one up too. And then we will get going. We'll be starting with Taylor because he or she posted first. All right, so are you there, Taylor?
Yeah, are you able to hear me?
I hear you fine. Do you want to read this out for us?
Yeah, sure. So logline is desperate to reclaim her formal social status. A timid divorcee teams up with an ambitious intern to organize a gala, but the night is quickly derailed when they find a guest dead in the bathroom and must dispose of the body before anybody finds out.
Okay, it's called Ladder. I get it, sort of like the social ladder, I guess is what you're referring to here, I would think. Or perhaps...
Yeah.
I see. Okay, let me read this again. So, desperate to reclaim her former social standing, a timid divorcee teams up with an ambitious intern to organize a gala. But the night is quickly derailed when they find a guest dead in the bathroom and must dispose of the body before anybody finds out. Is this kind of a comedic thriller?
No. So, no. I initially had written this as it took place during a high school party with high schoolers, and a girl trying to become popular, so she throws a party. And I mean, I'm not a comedic writer, so I switched it more into this, which is adults at a charity gala. There's definitely, some humor in there, but it is much more on dark thriller side. I would say visually similar to Stepford Wives, mixed with Gone Girl. Tonally, definitely more along the lines of Gone Girl.
I see. I guess just, and I'll let you go into the pitch because I think the logline is very well written. It's just that the situation, to me, only is, and maybe in the pitch you'll explain and clarify a little more, but to me it sounds like this would only really make sense in a comedy because most people, when they find a dead person in their party, would obviously not do this, right? They would call the police and the party would be over. So either this is like her one chance to possibly get her social standing back, or you're saying, like, do you see what I mean? How that it would need to be, like, people would only do this if there was absolutely no other way to, unless she's a total crazy person, right? But you have two characters working together to try to do this. So I'm just thinking, like, what would the circumstances be that they would feel that this was their only way to continue? It's not like you can never throw another gala, and if it's not their fault, then it's not like if people found the body they would be blamed for it, but maybe it like is their fault or something like that you'll clarify. I just want you to hear that at the beginning, which is I was envisioning this as a comedy because the situation just seems so kind of crazy, right? Especially like if it was the teenage party version, I would be like, okay, this is like a dark comedy because there's no kid in the world who would want to keep the party going, because even after the party's over, then the body's going to get found eventually, and then your reputation will be ruined anyway. So in any case, maybe you have answers for those things. I just thought that I'd express that. That's just my first gut reaction to the logline is, okay, this is a dark comedy thriller. And then to express it as a straight serious pitch, it makes me kind of scratch my head and go, okay, well, we'll see. But maybe the pitch will totally clarify that. So do you want to maybe just go into the pitch, or is there anything else you want to say beforehand?
Yeah, no, that would be it. And so I'll go right ahead. This starts 1 year after an unexpected divorce from her wealthy tech mogul husband. Kaya Braxton lives with her mother, spends her free time watching her former social life through Instagram posts while trying to find a new husband. Unexpectedly, one night while on a date, she runs into the people from her former social circle who give passive-aggressive remarks for her not being invited to her ex-husband's next charity gala. She comes up with a lie that she isn't worried about it. She's not focused on his because she's hosting her own gala. The following morning, she goes to event planning service called Albrecht Event Planning, who is also the subject of a reality TV show called Dream Planner, who Kaya's mom, Carolina, is obsessed with. The event planner tells her, no, we can't host your gala. Kaya offers the remaining money she received during the divorce due to not having a prenup, which was $100,000. That's all she's able to spend. They still tell her no, but eventually they give in and say that they'll have an intern named Isley Quinn work with her to plan this event, and it needs to be done in 1 week. So 1 week later, this intern busts her ass planning this event. And she tells Kaya that the reason she's working so hard is she wants full-time employment, and she desperately wants to be on this reality series based around this event planning company. As the event starts, Kaya and Isley, they're having a good time. Everything is going well until Evan, Kaya's ex-husband, arrives with his new girlfriend. Kaya is told to go into the bathroom, to a private bathroom. While she's in there, she hears a man gasping for air. She opens the door and finds it is Evan, Kaya's ex-husband, one of his his personal assistants dead in the bathroom. She calls in Isley, and the two initially they're going to call 911. But they walk out into the ballroom where they see everybody having a good time, and they decide they're going to get rid of the body.